Carl.
Michael Elliott,
Ernest.
Ernest Kitces. It's good to be back.
It's good to have you back. We're talking another week of scary markets.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a little bit of a downer to kick off with, but we finished the last one talking about scary markets, like your client is called and they're all worried, and like, how do you try to respond with empathy and maybe not the sometimes sort of gut response, like, oh my God, are we having this conversation again? Right? Like the ways that maybe I think we do sometimes unwittingly, sort of make our clients feel like they're being dumb for being anxious and upset about scary market stuff. But as we gone through that conversation, you kept kind of setting up like, but we're not going to talk about how you actually like get them down off the ledge. We're just talking about how you respond constructively in the moment when they're calling and they're freaking out. So we talked about that. And now for this episode, I really wanted to get back to the other part, which is literally the like, so how do you get them off the ledge?
Yeah.
When they're really wrapped up and freaked out. Because I'll be honest, I don't feel like I'm very good at this. So I know this is like our Kitces and Carl dialogue, two-way conversations. Like, I'm mostly here to learn on this one. What is it you do? Like, I know you spend so much time in this space on how do you communicate well with clients, including and especially through difficult moments like that. So
sure.
How do you get the clients off the ledge?
Yeah, that sounds fun. And my favorite conversations with you and my favorite things to do anywhere are things that may not work. So this sounds really fun. So here's what we'll do. And by the way, I think this conversation, there's some other little places you can go, which we can cover. Here I am again. Like, we can cover another time on like overconfidence and but I was going to say, I think this conversation works well for happy markets too, right? Like, somebody's, and by happy, I mean like out there on the ledge, greedy, like, hey, I really want to go do this thing, right? Like, I want to move all my money to whatever, new hot dot. But there are some subtle differences. So we'll just, so it's not like, I think this material is useful no matter what the call is. But let's just, for the sake of making the conversation fluid, we'll pretend like they're worried about something. And by the way, the something, it's so interesting to me, like what the something can be, right? Because we've all had these calls. Like, sometimes the market, it's in the news, and you expect a bunch of people to call.
So I think, for the sake of setting this up, I mean, we've all had the one-off situations where like there's something screwy in the news and like one client freaks out because they take the information wrong, or they're particularly anxious about something else, like they project it into markets and they're anxious about something that no one else is anxious about, and it's just kind of particular to them. But I think for this, I'd rather focus in on just the one we all know we have to deal with, which is at some point, like, markets actually are tanking. Really bad stuff is happening. So, it's a horrible quarter. The market is actually down like 15 or 20% on the quarter. It's off 30% from the highs. Like, we're in a full-on bear market. The market just went down 4% yesterday for the third day in a row. Right, like I'm projecting back to the horror that was 2008, right? And it's never the same, but it's often similar. So, like,
totally,
the world is melting down. My client calls all freaked out because the world is melting down.
Yep.
So how am I handling this?
Yeah. Let's do it. So here's the way I like to think about this, and it might help to just think visually. So we'll describe this. For those of you that are just listening, we're not drawing it here either, so I'm just going to describe it. Imagine like a pyramid, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like that pyramid.
Okay.
So a pyramid, we're going to divide it into three. We're going to divide it into a foundation, a middle, and a top. And the top of the pyramid, we're going to label product, or market, or economy. Like, we're just going to make it easy, I typically just label product. Like, and by product, I just mean like the specific investment, the market, or the economy. Most of our phone calls come in there, right? Like that's what they're pointing to is the top of that pyramid. And I think that's like, it's the scariest place. It's the narrowest. It's the hardest to stand on, right? Like there's all sorts of metaphors we could use there. That's where all the phone calls come in. And that's where you can't make any good decision there, right? Like so we have to, just to remind people, we go through this quickly. We go through this step where the first thing we do is absorb with empathy. Like we just give people a chance to be scared. Like it's okay. Being scared is okay. We covered this in the last episode. Being scared is okay. Acting on it's not, but being scared is okay. So we're going to absorb with empathy. We're going to use the please hold method. We talked about that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to use the please hold method just to give us a little space between the stimulus and the response. And now it's time to respond. So I want you to imagine that pyramid now with the top being product. Well, the bottom, the big foundation, we're just going to label, because like this word has some problems with it, but we're going to just label it plan. And by plan, just everybody relax. I don't mean a 2-inch thick doorstop. It could just be a simple investment policy statement if you're focused on the investments. Like whatever it is, it's the document. And if you don't have one of these, like the rest of this conversation will make no sense. Like all bets are off. Good luck. Throw performance at them and hope it works, right? So I hope that's coming across as super sarcastic, because you've got to have one of these, right? And all it is a simple document that spells out why you're invested the way you are.
Okay.
So if you call that a financial plan, great. If you call that a list of goals, great. If you call that an investment policy statement, fine. But there must have been some way that you made the decision to build the portfolio you did.
Okay.
So we're making a bunch of assumptions, right? Like if you build smorgasbord portfolios, if you have a hunch and buy a bunch for clients, like none of this stuff works.
Okay.
So we're making an assumption that you built a portfolio on purpose, designed to help a client, in shorthand, to help a client meet their goals.
Okay.
The way I like to say it is like the why is your money invested the way it is? The only right answer to that is this portfolio gives me the greatest likelihood of meeting my goals with the lowest risk. Okay. So some document that spells that out. That's what we're going to call plan.
Okay.
For most of the people listening, they know exactly what we're talking about, right? Yep. And they're good at that. They've got a financial plan or an investment policy statement that's detailed and spelled it all out, right? So that's the base of this pyramid. So we have to take people from the top when they call. If I was drawing this, I would have an arrow drawing, a line coming down to the top, and then I'd have it sort of bouncing off the top and coming around to the bottom.
Okay.
So when we say, please hold, like, hey, Michael, I understand you're scared. If it's true, you can say, in fact, I get a little scared too when I watch the news. And the reality is in 2008, 2009, I could say, the reality is this is scary times.
Yeah.
It's hard not to be scared. Can you give me a minute? I want to go get your file, right? There's the please hold. I go get your file. And what happens when I get the file? And this can happen in person. It can happen on the phone. What happens when I get the file is we're going to take you from scary out in the branches, product, market, economy, back to this grounded place. I think of it as a touchstone. Like we're going to remind you what you said when you were thinking clearly. And we're going to do it gently. Maybe in some cases you might have the relationship where you do it like a drill sergeant. But so we're going to say, hey, Michael, I've got your file here. And before we get into what's going on with the market and any changes that we have to make, believe me, we'll get there. Before we get there, I just want to make sure I just was reviewing my notes. I just want to make sure I got a couple things right. Like when we first met, and I think even last time when we first met, and then again during our reviews, and we just had one a couple months ago, you told me the most important thing about money to you was to spend time with the family, mainly outside, and serve in the community. I just want to check in. Like, has anything changed there?
Okay.
Right? So that would be step one. Checking in on, I would use that word. I'd use Bill Bacharach's word there. Like I'd use that word values or I like the word purpose, like some statement of purpose. If you've got that, that's the place you check in.
Okay.
And so if you said that to me, I'd say, yeah. Yeah. Now be careful here because clients can be tricky. Like they can say, well, it's the next step that they often will change on you. So there I'm going to say, yeah, Michael, actually that hasn't changed. But what does that got to do? Like I'm scared. Like the TV is blaring.
Yeah, but like, yes, that was my goal, and it's blowing up because we're down 30% and it's going to zero, and what the hell are you doing about it?
Yeah, totally. And I get that, Michael, and I understand how. I just want to make sure, because before we make changes, we typically don't make large changes based on the market. We make changes based on your life. So I just want to see if we're still at the same place. So that's good. After that, you told me the way that looks in your life. Now we're moving up that ladder to goals, right? So goals would have some specific parameter around them. So I'll pretend like you're one of my clients, Martha, who used to call. And I would say, Martha, your goal was to spend time with your family. Actually, your goal was to never run out of money, never run out of money, never have to worry about money again, and spend time with your kids and your grandkids. Is that still true? Yes, that's still true. Cool. Then you told me your goal was, in order to make that happen, you wanted to get $5,000 a month. And I just want to check, have any of these things changed? $5,000 a month. You wanted a check in your mailbox. Like you've been getting that. Is that still the goal? Yeah. Totally. Like get on with it. Okay. And you also wanted $10,000 a year to spend with the grandkids on anything you wanted. Still the goal. Okay, cool. Now we're going to move up to the next step. Now listen, Michael, everybody listening to this needs to know this is insanely unsatisfactory for people, right? This is the worst form of getting people to behave correctly ever created.
Okay.
Except for all the others. That's Winston Churchill's democracy quote, right? So the next thing we're going to do is say, look, goals, we're on the same page. Cool, they all check out. Now be careful here because goals, clients will sometimes change the goals, right? They'll be like, no, you know what? I wanted that, but now I just want safety, right? All right, goals, we check in. Next, we're moving up that next ladder. The middle of that triangle, we haven't labeled yet.
Yep.
We're just going to call that process, right? So we just moved from plan, goal, purpose, values, goals.
Okay.
Now we're going to move to the process. We're going to say, now remember, when we put this portfolio together, based on those goals you just reviewed with me, Michael, that you wanted $5,000 a month in your mailbox, and you wanted $10,000 a year to spend on the kids and the grandkids. We then went out and built a portfolio to give you the greatest chance of doing that. And remember, we did that on purpose. Remember all those conversations we had about it? Like every piece of the portfolio is there for a specific purpose. And the goal of each piece is to give you the greatest likelihood of meeting those goals with the lowest amount of risk. So each piece plays a part there. And now I want you to remember, I know it's hard in times like this, but remember, when we built that portfolio, we relied on the weighty evidence of history to do it. So we knew that markets go up and down.
Yeah.
Because it's in the data, right? Like the math that we used to build this portfolio incorporated really scary markets, and it also incorporated really good markets. So we knew, what I'm saying is we knew this would happen. Now, I've got to be clear with you, Michael. Right. We didn't know when. We didn't know why. We didn't know how bad. We didn't know but we knew that these sorts of things show up because they have historically. It's baked into the picture. So when we built that portfolio, we knew that there were going to be times like this where we were going to be worried or stressed out. We just didn't know when. And believe me, man, oh geez, Michael, if we had known when, like we would have called you. Like if we could find a better way. And so then remember when we built this portfolio, that was sort of the portfolio design, right? And I'm thinking pie charts here, right? This is like small cap value and large cap, and I'm thinking asset classes. Now I want to move to this last piece of the ladder. Right? The actual products. Remember, once we designed that portfolio, like this portfolio was custom built, like the specific allocation was built for you. We then needed investments. Sometimes we even use the word product, right? We needed to go find the best product to populate the plan.
Sure.
It was the last part of the whole process. The least. Now, this is much more interactive normally. We're trying to get this into 15 minutes. It'd be like a half an hour, 45-minute conversation, an hour. But and it would be fun at the end. I've got a last arrow discussion. So at the end, I want you just to be like, that's cute, Carl. But so you just be Michael to me at the end, and we'll see how it works out.
Okay. So, I'll be my obnoxious rational self. Got it.
We get to the. I didn't say it. We get to the product piece, and we just say, look. Then we went and scoured the planet for the right products to use. Like, in other words, the right investments, the right mutual fund, the right ETF, the right manager, whatever we're using here. Now, I want you to know at every step, like the plan, we've reviewed this. Your goals haven't changed. Like, why we're doing this hasn't changed. The portfolio that I would build for you, if you came in today and told me those same sets of goals, the portfolio would be the same. Even though it's scary, it would be the same. And believe me, we're on top of it sort of on a day-to-day basis in terms of anything changing with the product at the product level. And the kind of things that would change there are like, certainly like, somebody doing something that they shouldn't be doing. You and I have talked about all the criteria we use to pick investments, to decide which investments we should use. Nothing there has changed. So we're left in this really unsatisfactory place, right? That as painful as it is, this is how we would do it. Like, and my, like the way I like to end this is normally, so if it's okay with you, Michael, the only advice I have, and I love this idea of introducing like being honest. Like, I'm a little hesitant about this. Like, and by hesitant, I don't mean I'm hesitant in the advice. I wish I could give you something better. But we've tried, and I often use the Winston Churchill quote here. I would say, look, so to be honest, like be really direct. I'm trying to get myself to stop using to be honest. To be really direct, what this reminds me of, the way we manage money and the way we take care of sort of helping you meet your goals around here, it's the worst form of managing money ever created. Except for all the others, right? And I would tell them the Winston Churchill quote. I'd say, so in the end, like this is a 45-minute discussion now wrapping up. I'm saying, Michael, in the end, I can't think of any better advice right now. I know it's unsatisfactory. I know emotionally it's not what you want to hear, but I can't think of any better advice than we just stay the course. So if it's okay with you, that's what I'd like to do. I like to end it with, if it's okay with you, that's what I'd like to do, right? I can't think of any better thing to do right now than for us just to stay the course and, turn the TV off. Like, it's all we can really do right now. Okay, so now you get a chance to either ask questions or push.
And so I'm sorry, and you wrap that up with what was kind of your statement? Is that okay with you?
Yeah, now, if it's okay with you, right? Given everything that's gone on and all the review we've just done and the fact that your goals haven't changed and your values haven't changed and the portfolio design wouldn't change and the investment products, we double checked them again this morning, like they haven't violated any of our rules. If it's okay with, given all that, if it's okay with you, the best advice I can give you is we stay the course. So if it's okay with you, the best thing we could do right now is just to stay the course, right? Stay invested. Let's take some real notes of how we feel right now. Because to be honest, we're in a lifeboat. We're in a lifeboat. And I don't think it makes any sense to jump into the water, right? But when we get back on that ship, like we want to remember how this felt. Because we can make some changes when we get back on the ship, but changing right now is the equivalent to jumping into the water, right? So if it's okay with you, the best advice I can give you is just to stay the course.
But we're down 30. Like, I just don't know if I can stay in the lifeboat much longer.
Okay. So
I just can't take this.
Let's go here. Let's pretend like you're even more like, no, man, that's cute, but I want out, right? Here's my we've always called it sort of the last ditch effort. If somebody's really gonna pull the plug here, like, would you and I agree that that's a bad decision? You and I as advisors, like,
Yep.
It's a bad decision. again, we're huge caveats that you're a real financial advisor. You've got an actual plan. You've built the portfolio on purpose. All those caveats. This would be to blow out of a well-designed portfolio based on your values and goals because you're scared. It's a bad decision. So we really don't want this to happen. So you've got a couple options here. Like I used this I can remember a specific conversation with, how do I change his name? Let's just call him.
You can call him Ernest if you want.
Let's just call him Asher. Asher calls me. He's like, no, yep. All my goals are the same. Yes, my portfolio is the same. Yes, all that stuff. But I want out. So this is another conversation that I think is really useful. And I realize you're sort of putting the gloves on at this point. So, like if you're going to save this, because you got two choices. Okay. That's one choice. Right. And I think if that's the choice, well, let's talk about two things. One is we could scale the risk back a little bit. And I know there are some that are like, I will not do that. If you are not going to take my advice, tell me where to send the money, right? Nick Murray style, right? Like if you're going to tell me where to send, and I think that's a totally fine response. If it fits you, that's totally fine. And in some, but then there's other cases where maybe there's some other, I think of these as righteous tricks, right? Can we be thinking a couple of moves ahead, like playing chess instead of checkers, and think like, hey, I really want to help Asher long term. Is there something we can do here to tone that back? Now that may be in the middle, like, okay, you know what, Asher, maybe we take a little risk off the table, but I'm going to pretend like this is like all or nothing. So Asher's like, I want out. I said, okay, I got you. I hear you loud and clear. But let me ask you a question, Asher. Is this a permanent, like you want out forever? You're Asher, Michael. You want out forever?
No, not forever. Just not right now.
Okay. So
not in this like meltdown.
Okay, cool. So I just want to make sure we understand if we're going to, like we kind of like to have plans around here. So if we're going to get out, let's just talk about what happens next. If we're going to get out, but it's not forever, I thought, if it's forever, then we can build a new plan around the idea of owning, CDs for the rest of your life. That's totally okay. It just means we'll have to pull some other levers. But you're saying it's just, so we're going to get back in at some point.
Yeah, when all this stuff's over.
Okay, so let's this is really fun watching you pretend.
After the crisis is over,
let's perfect. So let's define that a little bit. So when will we get back in?
I don't know, after the meltdown is done.
Okay, so this is where you have to be careful, right? Because it's so hard to not be sarcastic here, but I'm suggesting not be sarcastic. Because, so I'm going to write down in my notes when the meltdown is done. And the words like that, when I use this with Asher said, when the dust settles. Okay, I was like, okay, cool. Yep. Dust settles. For these sorts of plans, this is a really important decision, Michael. We like to be a little more clear. So how would we know when it's, as you said, like when this is all over, how would we know you said the meltdown's done. How would we know when the meltdown's done?
Well, no, the market's not crashing anymore.
Okay, market not crashing. All right, cool. Let's put a little more parameter. Like, what do you think would be going on in the news when the meltdown is done?
The starting to talk about markets going up and like the banks aren't failing, and
so the news would be good. Like it's bad now, it would be good then. Okay, so news would be good.
Yes.
What would your neighbors be doing? Like your buddies at the club or whoever you're talking to now? Like what would they be doing with their money?
I don't know, probably buying as well. Like once things are moving up again, the dust is settled.
It's so fun to watch.
We're all in.
Buying as well. They would be buying as well. So news would be good. Your neighbors would be buying well. So here's the last question we sort of have to settle on. This is the one you have to be so gentle with. Like, the news would be good. Like the economy, what would be going on with the economy? It's not the last question. Sorry, we got one more. What would be going on with the economy?
Well, growing again and not all the, recession economic
better,
meltdown.
right? Yeah, so it'd be better. It'd be growing again. It wouldn't be economic. It'd be better. So here's the question I have for you. Let's just try and peg something here. Like, where would the market be relative to where it is today if it was no longer melting down? Where would the market be? If the news was good, the economy was good, your neighbors were investing, where would the market be relative today? Higher or lower?
Well, probably going higher as long as it didn't go a lot lower first.
Okay, so
I don't know how far down it's going from here. That's why I want out.
So you understand, like, if we've got two decisions to make if we decide to sell. One is when to sell. The other one is when to get back in. And I don't think we can make either one of those right, because if we wait until the neighbors are buying, the news is good, the economy's better, I'm telling you, the markets are going to be higher than wherever they are now. Right? So the chance of getting both of those right is just a game I can't play. Now, here, this is the spot at which, remember we talked about we don't want to throw data and evidence at people. This is the spot at which you do. You've been empathetic. You've had hugs. Now's the time to blast people with data if you want to. Right? Average bear market's this long. If you miss this many if you miss the top 10 days in a decade, if you, like, all of those data points that we all throw around, now's the time that we can do that and say, look, given all the data, everything I know of no better way to do this. Believe me, if there was a better way to do it, we would be doing it. But I don't want to enter into a plan to sell low and buy a little bit higher on purpose. I just don't think that sounds like a good idea. So again, I'm just going to suggest, what if you were to go away for the next, pretend like you're going to go away for 3 years, right? And you asked me to make this decision. I'm telling you right now what my decision would be. Of course, it's your call at the end of the day. But if you asked me to make this decision, I would grit my teeth and stick with the plan we built. Right? Like,
okay. I'm feeling good. I want to hold it. I wasn't actually about to sell because I'm me now and I'm not Asher, but like I'm freaking sold on this. I want to go buy more. I don't even know what the market did today.
Yeah, well, we can, and that's another place you can go, right? Like, is you can start telling stories. Like, one of the stories I would tell every once in a while would be around, I know this, everybody would know who it is, but I had a conversation with an investment manager that you all know, and he was telling me about how in 2009, 2008, in his personal life, he and his wife, these are people worth more money than most of us will ever consider in our lives. He and his wife stopped buying books and started going to the library because they wanted to increase their automatic investments by $50 a month, right? Like, they were trying to find every dollar they could find. There are people like that are wired to rush in when the rest of us are rushing out. Most of us, you and I, Asher, we're not wired that way. Yeah. But I'm just asking you to let's put a little some roadblocks around us so we can at least behave that way right now. Or you can do the last thing you could do is, Asher, it's crazy you called. At the very end of this, you can say, look, it's crazy that you called because I was going to call you because it's time for us to rebalance. Right? We need to be taking money from the safe side of your portfolio and buying the stuff that grows. So that's all I've got.
It's a powerful, truly, like I'm sold as we went through the discussion. I mean, it's a powerful piece because you can, I don't know, I mean, to me at least, you can feel the empathy connect that builds, right? Of the, like, upfront, hey, I know you're scared. Like, I'm scared. Just this stuff is scary, right? I'm thinking back to 2008, going through that, like, acknowledging this stuff is scary. And then your laddered approach, like, hey, I just want to check in about this information. Like, these were the values. This is what we were working towards. Then here were the goals you said. And here was the process we said we were going through in order to do that. So here's the portfolio we built based on the process, based on the goals, based on the values. Like, you've laddered them all the way up. Say, like, was there anything wrong in this process? Okay. If not, then can we keep hanging out where we are?
Yeah, I've found, I think what that all points to is taking them out of the trees, right? Like, out of the, like like the trees that are they're way out on the branches of these limbs, right? And of course, when it's windy out there, these things move. It's scary. And we're just trying to bring them back to the trunk. Like here's how we decided, and let's just walk through basically sort of the rationale and the fact pattern behind this, and here's how we got where we are. And every point along the way, I think it's really important that you can be confident. Like, look, I'm telling you, remember when we built that portfolio? You could spend the next 17 years of your life looking at everything ever written on portfolio design, and I don't think you'd uncover a better way to do it. Like, I felt confident saying that. Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the market, but I know that the way we built this portfolio relies on the best process out there.
Well, and what strikes me to it is just, I mean, I'm thinking through this conversation playing out, like, this will literally take time. I mean, if you're going to go back and forth and like, here were your values and here were the goals you said, there's going to be some chatter and like, here was our process and here's what we did. Like, the fact that conversation takes time, I think is part of the point, because however wound up I was when this phone call started or this meeting started, and like I built up all my anger in the car driving to your office to tell you off that I'm so pissed that my portfolio's gone down, all that, like the sheer time it takes for that conversation to unfold, I feel like is part of what gives the client the time to decompress out of sort of that most emotional state back to the point where, as you said, by the end, look, if you've gone through this whole journey, this conversation has lasted long enough, they should be largely out of emotional space. You're at least having a little bit more of rational conversations. Like, now you get to use the data, not back then, but now you get to use the data because you've taken this conversation out long enough that you've given them time to get to the point where you can actually have that part of the conversation. I say
it another way, you've absorbed, with empathy, you've absorbed all that anxiety. And I think at every step, right, it creeps back up. Like you would have noticed when we said the investment products, oh, I know, like there's news about this and news about that. Like at every step, we're looking for a chance to be empathetic and say, look, and even to the point of saying, look, I know it's terribly unsatisfactory. I know it doesn't mean you can go home and sleep really well, right? Because you still got the financial pornography network yelling at you. But even in spite of that, I know of no better way. So at every step, we're trying to be empathetic. The most common response, I mean, I had that conversation definitely north of 100 times. Like, I don't want to say thousands of times, but hundreds of times I've had that conversation. The most common response is, oh, thanks, man, forget I called. And then I got to the point with people often enough, they would just call and go, tell me that story again, right? I never got to the point where anybody would go, hey, can you just tell me story number 2? You know, like we never got to that. But it was like, hey, I'm worried. Can you tell me that story again, right? Walk me through that thing again. So, and we've also got to recognize sometimes it doesn't work, right? Like there's examples in there where somebody's just like, yeah, great, man. My goals are different. I've had enough of this. It's gone on too long. You told me that last month. We had this exact conversation last month. I'm down 10% again. I'm out. And you finally just have to go, hey man, I've totally done my best. I think you need to find a new advisor, but I'm here for you to make that process as clean as possible. How would you like to handle it? Do you want to just go to all cash? Do you want to do this gently? What would you like me to do? Because you tell me the end point and I will give you advice on how to get there, even though I don't agree with the end point, because I'm your friend. And then at some point we'll find a smooth transition to get you to somebody new. That's happened.
And failing anything else, you just start off with every call with, funny you called me. Yeah, I was just going to call you to rebalance.
Or isn't it Nick Murray's line? Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Right? Like it just we can just have an answering machine that says, don't do that. Yeah, exactly. Okay, man.
Well, awesome. I hope this isn't a conversation that we have to do anytime soon, but you know, as you said, like inevitability of markets, it is a conversation we'll have to do at some point with clients. So thank you for sharing a path. Hopefully this will be a helpful reference point or inspiration whenever we get to the next round of these conversations in the markets.
Amen, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you, Carl.